Hey there, Dave Paulides, Canammissing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video page, and we are at Upper Whitefish Lake, about an hour away from the city of Whitefish, and it's up a dirt road. First time I've ever been here. It's really pretty, and we did some huckleberry picking this afternoon, and it's late August, and there weren't many left. And the best thing was, on the way up, a little baby bear crossed the road in front of us. You didn't see Mom. Mom must have been in front, but jet black bear, good size, but you could tell it was a baby. So we're at the lake. There's a couple of kayaks out here, and fish were jumping. And I got my pole here somewhere. It's here, trust me. Anyhow, let's see, what else? Oh yeah, people always want to see the pole. So I didn't bring my fly pole because there weren't very many flies out. It got kind of cold this afternoon, so I was going to throw some lures. So, and I will. In fact, I already have, but we'll do more later. It's late in the afternoon here. When the sun's out, it's about 65, and when the sun's behind the clouds, it's about 55. So it's variable in the weather, but it's a perfect day. Perfect day. So I'm going to go straight into reading the letters today. This one, Dave. I actually grew up in Los Gatos, which is where I lived before I moved to Colorado. I went to Van Meter Elementary School, then Fisher Middle School, then Los Gatos High School. Go Wildcats. I'll be 30 in October. Now, I live in Texas. I was actually born here, Lake Livingston. 10 years ago, I was living in California and going through New Mexico into Texas somewhere. I stopped at a rest to use the restroom. I was with my ex-boyfriend and his mother. As we were all about to get back into the car to leave, this older man asked us for some help. He said he had a flat tire on his trailer. He had a huge boat that looked like it was aluminum, very shiny, silver. I've still never seen anything quite like it. Not a speedboat or a pontoon, it was huge. My ex went to help him, and for some reason the jack stopped working, and instead of asking around for another jack for someone to help, my ex lifted it up all by himself so the guy could get his tire on. Not thinking anything of it, we said glad we could help and get back into our car. As we get back onto the highway and all, we realize that we were at that rest stop for 5 hours. It had felt like 30 minutes. We all had goosebumps. As we're coming up on the next rest stop, we decided to stop. We pull in and realize it looked exactly like the last one. We're all anxious and scared for some reason, and my ex's mom told us, well, that was weird. That guy back there at the last rest stop, he gave me a big hug and told me that he had done nothing but delay our journey. Then I realized we didn't see any other people at that last rest stop despite being there with lots of cars and trucks. And we're making all these points out loud to each other, and my ex said, why are these all the same vehicles in the same spot? It was like we looped back and went to the same rest stop, except the man with the truck and the boat wasn't there. We said, heck, no, and kept driving. Once we got further away from it, we realized we were all weirded out and felt scared and anxious about the whole time. I can't even explain it all. We had thought at the time that it was someone keeping us back from a wreck we could have been in or something like that. No clue, but very scary. It was very weird. But anyway, I want to say thank you for talking about mental health as well. I'm currently 8 months sober. Just got my son back home with me, trying to get this 2-year-old sister home still. While I was in my active addiction 8 months ago, I had absolutely no hope, very depressed and didn't want to live anymore. But I went into a rehab facility with my husband, and we found out I was pregnant again. Been sober ever since. I feel like I'm in control of my emotions. Love it. Anyways, sorry this is super long. My husband and I support everything you do. Keep on doing it. Don't listen to the haters. That was a good story. And congratulations on your being sober, and really congrats on your pregnancy. Next story. Hello, Dave. I've been watching your videos, watched both your movies, and on my 3rd book right now. First off, thank you for everything you do to bring awareness to the families of the missing people. Prayers and positive vibes are always being sent your way. Last November, I was driving home after Thanksgiving at my parents'. I took a different way home and was using my GPS on my smartphone. The drive should have taken about 3.5 hours. At some point, it was like I woke up, although I was awake the whole time, as I'm the only one in my car other than my 3 dogs. I'd driven over 170 miles, and hours had passed when I said, whoa, I just woke up at this point. I started to panic. I had no idea where I was. Even my GPS on my phone had just stopped. Would love to discuss this incident with you, as there is much more to the story, but wanted to keep this short for you. Well, that's 2 in a row now. So I'll look into this and send the person a note and see if we can follow up on it. But I've heard similar stories many times. If you're hearing water splashing, that's a person in a kayak out there. Next story. I'll try to keep this brief. In other videos and in your previous video today posts, you said these falls have meaning, meaning people falling and being found. This is an interesting email. I'll just preface this, so stay with it. Okay, I'll start over. In other videos and in your previous video to today's post, you said these falls have meaning. Parentheses, this is what the Holy Spirit impressed upon me as I listened to you say this sentence once again. I saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven, Luke 10:18. It appears to be a mockery of God's creation. Man, a lot of those missing people are described as brilliant or assets to their communities and beloved members of families, and they're being cast out of a heavenly realm just as Satan was. Now these victims are the new fallen angels. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Ephesians 6:12-13. If you read through Romans 3:10-23, you will get a description of the current state of this world. Though this was always been the state of mankind from the time that sin entered the world, the Bible says there is no one righteous, not even one. Romans 3:10. All have sinned, and all have fallen short of the glory of God. The purpose of our lives is to restore our relationship with God through His Son Jesus, and to live maintaining that relationship. Just like the vows of marriage, our number one goal is to always be faithful to God no matter what. I continue to pray for your healing over the loss of your son. Our online village is also in my prayers. Thank you for all you do, and I appreciate your prior service as a police officer. Thank you. Interesting. And there's another one that's really good coming up. Dave, stay with this one, because this one will wake you up. I've been following, listening, observing intently for the last 6 months or so. I have too much to say, so I'll be breaking this up into sections that you can read, if you have the time. Background and context. I own 2 small businesses that deal with building engineering-grade 3D models out of drone image data and commercial photography, videography. In the last 3 to 4 years, I've worked in nearly 30 states. The day you met Mr. Bigelow in Columbia Falls, I was working in Kalispell and staying in a small cabin in Coram. I also was having similar life-shifting experiences within a very similar geographic region. I probably drove within a few hundred yards of you as you were having that conversation. I am often alone in remote, rural, and even desolate corners of America. Much of my work is mapping sites for future cell towers in areas that don't have significant coverages, remote areas. As I type this, I'm alone in my hotel room in Toledo, Ohio. I often listen to your content as podcasts as I drive across the country, or have quiet meals by myself as I work to build, save for my wife and I to begin a family. Vision. I have several observations and theories that coincide with your work and research. I believe, whether you know it or not, that you may have the heart of Jesus. He states about himself, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost." Okay. And then he says, even archangels had routes, for Gabriel's way was blocked. If he could manifest anywhere, this wouldn't have been an issue. Certain access points and highways, channels must exist. There is apparently some communication relay infrastructure as well. Heaven hears our prayers, but also principalities are limited to certain lanes of travel because of the word has gone ahead of the principality of Greece. He was on his way, they knew that, but battle was not necessary yet, because he could not just appear. He had to follow whatever the predetermined route was. This is interesting. So I think you're onto something. And there are environmental conditions that are conducive to spiritual movements. And in the same way, if a being of a spiritual reality can manifest in this physical reality, then it seems possible for a physical being to move or be removed to a spiritual reality. Enoch ascends, Jesus ascends. They are still in physical bodies as they leave. Stay with this. Would love to participate in the gathering of real data on this. What are incidences of dimensional shift, for lack of an official term, across cultural worldwide? And how could that be playing into what is happening in these environments where people are missing or gone? And what if there were ones with actual understanding and authority to go in and declare their return? Imagine what could be possible now that we can house heaven, creator, and life in our physical bodies, taking that into geographic regions that are controlled by lesser spiritual beings. At Skinwalker, when the portals open and the creatures are seen passing through, there are repeated accounts of putrid smells. Jesus is the fragrance of life. If there are lesser spirits entering and exiting with devious intentions, along with prescribed ways, then it makes sense it would smell of death. Interesting observation. In a very heavy way, you're learning the infinite ways people are lost. With Ben's passing, 411 was a deep and detailed analysis of people undergoing external calamity, has also now shifted to a passion and awareness of the internal calamity people face. So, what if, yes, empathy, yes, better understanding of oneself through counseling and introspection is important, but what if also you, Dave, are being tuned to the reality that there's a spiritual force that's capable of physically taking and also a more commonly emotionally takes? It seems like our greatest weapon against the global plague of depression would be peace, not of this world, spiritual peace and identity. So I want to encourage you. There is a force trying to break you. Break your effort to seek, save, and resolve the lost. But there is an opportunity to burn even deeper, to be tuned and open to being a force of restoration, to build a community focused on all facets of restoration. I've seen in hours and hours of your videos a shift from solely making precise analytical assessments to real manifestations of vulnerable love and empathy. Your combining of these two, being open to letting traditional wisdom be confounded, is a powerful instrument in this age. Take heart and do not be discouraged. Today, when you hear the voice of the Lord, do not let your heart be hardened. I would also love to be available in whatever ways are possible. I have a significant amount of experience navigating across all types of terrain using only GPS coordinates and maps. I have a few thoughts on different ways to quickly make multi-layered, high-resolution maps in areas if that would help. I dream of being a real use and innovation in SAR initiatives and figuring out a way to do that in full time, but I don't really know where to start or what the appropriate channels or connections are. And I'd love to partner if I can in getting it as technically sound and process procedure for all types of SAR. I appreciate your help. Believe you're on a forefront of something that could be really powerful, the same tactical mind, bravery, and fortitude it takes to go into adverse situations, areas, and make recovery efforts, analytical assessments, and data collections. So I'm praying for you, Dave, for a fullness of hope and a restoration of fire in your core, to be an instrument of hope in the hopeless. Even as the taste of hopelessness lingers in your mouth, know you have one person who's not just a fan of the content, but someone who wants to be a part of the solution and who sees you, a man who, despite the despair of unimaginable loss, has a heart for restoration and resolution. And I'm declaring in Jesus' name that you will see it come into fruition in the coming months and years to come. I hope each part of this was able to be read and taken in. Sorry there's so much left out. I left out huge parts of the story, but I could fill it in. All the best. That was a great email. Really makes you think. And that's what I like in the letters that I'm getting from you guys. So, much appreciation. Next one. Dave, thank you so much for doing the feature on John Stivers. Now let me stop there. John was the man that disappeared from Sonora. Did a video about him just a couple weeks ago. He and his family owned a marina, an RV on Lake Tulloch in California. He and his wife worked together all day, or half the day. They had lunch, and he went into Sonora, went to the bank, made a big deposit, and then left and disappeared. And I'll put the link to that video on this. Hello, Dave. Thanks so much for doing the feature on John Stivers, my brother-in-law. We have been trying very hard to get this word out on his disappearances in hopes that someone will come up with some information. The Sheriff's Department has been disappointing to say the least. They're still just getting warrants and trying to find the path of the van 4 weeks later. The FBI has twice offered to assist them, and they have turned them down. Other local law enforcement agencies have also offered assistance and have been refused. By the questions that they have asked my sister and some of their statements, we feel that they are focusing on their idea that John walked away and barely considering any other possibility. No one that knows John thinks that he walked away. As his brother said, he wasn't able to hide his feelings, and if he had planned on leaving, many people would have noticed a change in him and his actions. John had planned a vacation to Tahoe for the day that he went missing, and had talked about picking up their RV in preparation for the trip. He was very attached to his family and would not leave them, including his mother, who was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's. He had just made a large deposit in the bank. His boots were found near the van. His passport is here at the house, etc. The detectives have taken every weekend off and a couple of extra days, so in the 3.5 weeks that John's been missing, they've had 7 days of no investigation. Is there anything we can do to push the Sheriff's Department? The FBI would have quickly completed what they have taken 3.5 weeks to do. So I did respond. I won't say how I responded, but needless to say, sheriff's departments, especially in non-urban areas, don't have a long history of handling cases like this. And they don't want a big agency like the FBI looking over their shoulder. So commonly, they won't invite them in because they don't want to be second-guessed. That's the number one reason. Aside from that, I have no idea. The FBI should have put an evidence response team on that van and taken it bumper to bumper. I don't know who did it. Hopefully somebody did it. But, yeah. I am communicating with that family now, so anywhere I can help them, I will. Enough with the letters. Now we're going to get into a interesting section. We're going straight into missing people. And the first case I'm going to talk about is one out of Southern Oregon. A little girl named Zoe Dorsey, 4 years old. This happened on March 17, 2010, in the late afternoon. She lived 2 miles east of Brookings, Oregon, near the Chetco River. And in that afternoon, she just disappeared. Parents started looking, couldn't find her. They called the sheriff. Sheriff came out. Everyone's yelling, screaming, trying to find her all over the yard, all over the hill behind her yard. Usually those hasty searches, they probably go out a half a mile or more, people yelling. Sheriff was trying to get people there. The next morning, that'd be the 18th of March, they bring in 200 searchers, 6 dog teams, and they start going over that area. Well, it got to be the late afternoon, and they weren't finding her. And what happened was there was a man that was a resident of that Brookings, Oregon area named Robert Crump. And he and his wife wanted to help some way. So he drives up a nearby road, takes out his ATV, and him and his wife start driving around. And they get out and they start walking through the bushes. And they're still not finding anything. And they're not hearing anything. But then they stop and they hear what they describe as a yip. Yip. Something like that. And he described it as being unnatural. But there were no other sounds. There were not even any sounds of searchers. So him and his wife are looking around and walking on this hillside. And as he walks up, he looks on the ground, and there buried under leaves and brush is Zoe. And he said he couldn't believe what he was looking at. So he unburies her. He picks her up. She doesn't say a word. He carries her back to their ATV. They go back to their truck. They call the sheriff. Sheriff comes out, Well, she'd been gone at that point almost 24 hours. And she had mild hypothermia. So a Coast Guard helicopter from Brookings responded, picked her up, and flew her to a hospital where she recovered. And now she's probably about 14 or 15, probably embarrassed if she ever hears this. But first of all, she never spoke while she was in the presence of Robert. And they described her as being mildly hypothermic after being out. It was in the 30s or 40s the night before. So multiple canine teams don't find her. A helicopter with FLIR doesn't find her. 200 searchers don't find her. But here's the kicker. She's found 200 yards behind her house. So if she was there the entire time, why didn't she answer her parents or all the searchers that were out looking for her? It makes no sense. No sense at all. They're very close to the Chetco River. And search and rescue team didn't find her. It was this man, Robert Crump. What made the yip sound? Sure as heck wasn't her. And she was in an area that was searched heavily the night before. How does all this happen? What transpired that night? At 4 years old, she might remember what happened. But it's hard to believe that it was just a normal disappearance with all the facts I just gave you. So, next case happened just a few miles, I would say probably 10 miles from where Zoe disappeared. Sonboon Thongsavat. He was 48 years old. He went missing December 27th, 2005 at noon. He was a mushroom picker. He was with his family, and they had traveled there from Wairika to see friends in Brookings. And that day, on September 27th, they decided to go out mushroom picking. And they went 11 miles up the Chetco River. So Zoe lived 2 miles up. And they were placed near a place called Snaketooth, Butte. And as they went out to pick, Sonboon decided to go out on his own. And so at about noon, they lost sight of him. At 10 o'clock, they started to look for him. Couldn't find him. He wasn't responding. They call in search and rescue. Same search and rescue team that looked for Zoe. Well, I know this area super well because I fished the Chetco River probably 20 times. It's beautiful. And every time I've been in there, it gives me the creeps. It's one of the few places in the world that's really given that to me. And I can't explain it, but the fishing is phenomenal, but it's creepy. That's all I can tell you. Well, the sheriff's searching, and they're not finding anything. They started full bore with 200 people on December 28th. And after 4 days, they're not finding anything. But at noon, after the weather had been horrible for the last 4 days, it rained 10 inches in those 4 days. Wind was up to 45 miles per hour. It kept a lot of the planes grounded. And one of the people that was with the search and rescue team are going through an area that they have gone through probably 20 times. And it was less than 1/3 of a mile from the entry point where the group went in on the trailhead. And they found him deceased. 6 canine units missed him. Hundreds of searchers missed him. And he's found in his rain gear laying there. They never released a cause of death. The sheriff said that he might have died from hypothermia because the weather was so bad. But the sheriff also said that that area where he was found had been searched dozens of times the first day, and they never found him. What happened? Doesn't make sense. I don't think searchers can be that bad, number one, but I know multiple dogs like that don't miss a body. So he wasn't there in my mind. So I'm going to show you something here. This is California-Oregon border. This is Brookings, Oregon right here. This is where Zoe lived. This is the Chetco River. This is where Sonboon was found, Snaketooth Butte. Distance from here is about 9 miles. Here to here about 2 miles. This area gets a lot of rain. And the Chetco River is famous for salmon and steelhead fishing. And it's beautiful. These are really thick woods back in here. Super thick. Step off the trail 20 feet. You may not find the person. But a third of a mile near the trail, hard to understand. So, next case. Correct that. November, let's try that again. October 14th, 2016, Shawn Higgins, he was 41 years old. His son Trevor, 21 years old, and Trevor's uncle, all three of them decided to go hunting in an area about 45 miles east of Gold Beach, Oregon, and an area called Bear Camp. Now, Shawn was born and raised in Coos Bay, which isn't very far away. And from the time he was a teenager, he hunted this area of Bear Camp with his wife when they were really young, and then with his kids when he got older. And originally they started hunting turkey there, and then they started hunting deer. So his wife described it that he knew this area extremely well, really well, to the point that she said she could never understand how he got lost there if that's what happened. But Shawn and Trevor decide on October 14th to drive in their truck. They were going to drop their uncle at one location and then drive down to a specific location. Trevor and Shawn, Trevor was 21 at the time, they get out of their truck and they decide to split up and hunt different areas nearer the truck and meet back at a specific time. Point of separation. Well, at the end of that day, Trevor comes back and his dad's not there. And he waits and waits. And finally his uncle walks all the way back to the truck, and it's almost dark. And they start yelling and screaming and looking around, and Trevor goes off looking, and the uncle goes another way looking. Guess what happens? Trevor doesn't come back. Now he's missing. Now you've got two people missing. The uncle goes down into Agnes, Oregon, calls the sheriff, and the sheriff responds and gets there the next morning and brings troops with him to search. Horrible, horrible weather for 4 days. Rain, wind. Searchers are out, hundreds of searchers. The community rallies around this. The wife gets told that her husband and her son are both missing under separate circumstances from the same location. 4 days later, 2.5 miles away from the truck, searchers find Trevor, barely alive, hypothermic, and they call for an evacuation helicopter. They take him to a hospital. On the way to the hospital, obviously the mom wants to know, hey, did you find your dad? Where is he? Did you see him? Trevor wants to know, did anyone find his dad? He's worried. No, Trevor never saw the dad, and the dad still hadn't been found. Massive search. The 9-day search did not find one item belonging to Shawn Higgins. And the wife found that very odd. I find that extremely odd. But the real oddity to this is that two people disappeared at the same spot from that truck. It's been almost 5 years now. Shawn's never been found, even though he knew this area super well. To walk out of that area, I don't believe anybody could walk out of it unless you were a superhuman. I've been to the spot where he disappeared. I was there a couple years ago, spent half a day walking through it. It's gorgeous, it's rough. I can understand why the hunting would be difficult because there wasn't a lot of open area. But canines never found him. You have point of separation, you have multiple disappearances, you have a subgroup of hunters, and you have weather. So, show you a map. I'm big on maps if you haven't figured that out. So, this is where Shawn disappeared at Bear Camp. This is Gold Beach. So what you do is you follow this road up along the Chetco, or up along the Gold Beach Road through Agnes, and then you can take a cut off into Bear Camp. This is where the Snaketooth Butte was, where Sonboon disappeared. Air miles, 30 air miles between these locations. Now right here is where Zoey disappeared. This area, these woods, really thick, really rough. There's Shawn. He's a timber faller, outdoorsman, master hunter. Hunted 20 years, at least, well, probably 25 years of his life. And again, knew that area like the back of his hand. A lot of people said a lot of things about this case over the years. And even his wife said as recently as a couple years ago that she's heard all kinds of theories, strange theories about what happened. A lot of times these things, they're hard on the family because people say rough things. Oh, your husband probably just walked away and started a new life. There's no evidence of that. It shouldn't even be said. But Shawn's case is a tough one because to reconcile that canines never picked up his scent, that none of his things have ever been found, that he knew the area so well that nobody would believe he got lost. What happened to him? So, this is all happening in Southwest Oregon. And I feel real bad for Trevor and his brother losing their dad at such a young age. And Trevor, you got to get a pat on the back for giving it a huge effort to find his dad. I mean, risking his own life to find his dad that night. It's admirable. I have a lot of respect for that. So anyhow, 3 missing person cases in Oregon. Read you some interesting letters. And again, you're on Upper Whitefish Lake. And I'll give you a little tour. The sun's kind of blasting in my face, but I'll give you a little tour of the area here. Over on that far bank, there's an outlet for the lake. And it's kind of marshy out there. It's really pretty. And then I'm going to take you around this way. We've got to stop about here because the glare is going to get so bad. But down at the far end of the lake, this area down in here, that valley gets really remote. On the right side of the screen, there's a mountain range, and we're right at the base of it. You can't see it from where we are because there's a lot of trees. But this area has tons of wildlife, really pretty. And I will definitely be back. So anyhow, hope you liked the segment. If you do, give me a thumbs up. Remember one big thing, do not buy my books on Amazon. I was looking today, $125 for some of the books. Buy them from me for $24.99. Thanks a million for being part of the village. And support each other, be nice, and love your country. Have a great week.